it's, how am I wanting to start this off? It's not the deep fakes that you have to worry about. It's the AI generated propaganda art. I'm seeing so much stuff shared around that I know somebody didn't take the time to paint a picture depicting a thing that happened yesterday. There's poses, there's nonverbal sentiment expressed through facial expression, body posture, actions portrayed, etc. And I mean, you can catch an example of this in a way with the profile picture avatar that I have for my YouTube channel. I put in my username into which one was it? Oh, it was Dolly 2. And or it got called Crayon by that time, I think. And it presented a number of images, other ones which were not what I was looking for as far as trying to get a picture, but at the same time resonated with me psychologically. It was as if a review of all of the verbal content of the all the captions and everything, the titles of the videos, the posts that I've made, etc. It's kind of almost like the What Would I Say, which was a procedurally generated Facebook post that is similar to what GPT does now. Much less sophisticated, but at the same time, you could get an impression that whatever was directing the verbal expression had its own point to make, or was the one speaking and not actually something coming from the individual. This is most prevalent in the case of, I had my Facebook and my name, which at this time I have no Facebook. They're all deleted. Like I had my main account, I had a couple of pages that I created and operated, and everything is deleted. I had found a way to use this, what would I say, procedurally generated post maker to read past posts and formulate what it expected the next one to be. And of course, for one thing, it was not a conscious entity, and it did not have the slightest bit of context of my life as the person who's been writing the posts and content on that site, right? That it would attempt to say something in the same vein as whatever had been being said. But the other thing is that I started having my named Facebook, what would I say, create posts that ended up referring to the kiosk Facebook page, which I was able to use with what would I say as well, which they eventually stopped being able to do. But as I was the sole person operating on the site, it was able to take this as an individual. And of course, the kiosk is a little bit of a character. Not, it's, I don't want to say work shoot, but whatever, when you think of the guy you're looking at and you think of the kiosk, this is not necessarily the same as the person who's creating the videos. Subtle differences, not, night and day. It's not that a-hole heel on the wrestling is actually the nicest guy. It's not like that, but it's that what the kiosk is as opposed to the guy that operates the site. And so I ended up having these two procedurally generated post reader and create another one options for myself as my name and my posts on that, as well as the posts on the kiosk Facebook page. So then I started having posts generated by this, what would I say, leaving comments on posts on this made by what would I say. And how I was able to do this was I would share and copy the text of something from the kiosk page share it on the Facebook on my name, and then have a what would I say generate the next post. And after several of these going through, I started having what was called RobBot, and it was referring to things in a post from the kiosk bot. So then I would take that post, I would put that text as a comment on the post, and then I would generate a kiosk bot post. And it would eventually start to come around to being able to pick up on the comments being left and generate a response to the comment. But I had to manually put these together. This is also about 8 to 10 years ago. And it was interesting seeing them interact. And then eventually what would happen is the aspects of shadow and intrusive thoughts and inner darkness would attempt to have a post via the RobBot. And it's not that those dark things were controlling the bot necessarily, although I do have some hypotheses on psychical interactions with computational things that are technically a quantum process that can be affected by observation. And it's kind of one of those why electronics are susceptible to what may or may not be paranormal activity kind of thing. And I've definitely had some fun with random number generators. So it was interesting the things that would happen because the kiosk bot stayed pure. And the RobBot, I don't want to say successfully replicated the rapidity with which my mood swings occur, I should say, because it's quite variable. And it, I believe, like the ads based on activity and whatnot else from YouTube's advertising, mistook bipolar in the ultradian cycle, which is at that time was still not well known. So it's not something that's likely to be connected into the people that are doing the censoring or whatever. But the ads and all the detection of whatever through content mistook a very unique kind of bipolar, something that is kind of standing on the fence with like schizoaffective, because that's what my sister has. I don't have any of the symptoms like she has in the same ways or anything. I have things that are definitely could be counted more within, bipolar things, but even like occasional auditory hallucinations or loops of, and it's not like it's just, I hear a thought, but it's like, I might think I hear a door shut one time and only one time. So like I said, there's this weird, dark parts of the shadow, like intrusiveness to such a mental illness that would try and come forth. And that's a whole other story. Look up LOAB, lobe, to see the computerized evolution of that. But what people need to be careful of here, and I know it's going on 9 minutes in, it's not that there will be footage that is deep faked to trick people into thinking a thing happened or whatever. We're watching for that, but that's not what it is. What it is being able to specifically verbally describe what you are wishing for an image to depict, such to convey to others. And what you get is like, I saw one that was shared by a guy named Bill Bailey. That's not the name he goes by on YouTube. And he was one of the lawsuits in Michigan to do with the mail-in voting in 2020, which my opinion on 2020 hasn't changed. I just haven't talked about it on here directly because it's easier to keep my channel with viewers if I don't talk about it, right? So anyway, he posted one that, and bless his heart, he means well. Unless he doesn't, I can't read his mind. a picture depicting what happened with the Iowa caucus last night. Now, here's the thing. A caucus is not the same as a primary, and neither is the same as an election. A primary is when people simply cast a ballot among available choices for candidates for the nomination for running for president. It's a semifinals or whatever. State by state. Some states caucus, some states primary. And what Iowa does is it caucuses, and that is not a vote. That is groups of people who are delegates. It's kind of like an electoral college kind of thing, except these people, technically like the electoral college, have the right to choose which candidate they are going to delegate to. And it comes down to a kind of a quorum thing at that point. So they need a certain number of electors, as it were, a certain number of delegates. It's the same basic process, slightly different rules for each one. And what happened last night was the culmination of all of this asinine advertising, AI-generated propaganda, and people just flat out being paid to lie. Old school, still doing it. And I'm not saying this like, oh shit, goddamn it, Trump. No, it ain't like that. I'm not unhappy that Trump won Iowa. What concerns me is the thing to do with the bonitis. And it heartens me to see people chanting VP at Vivek with Trump standing there. Vivek appears to be a constitutionalist. Now, the problem is that Obama, who we now know was an utterly atrocious president, or we're still asleep, was a constitutional law scholar and professor. The difference is Vivek Ramaswamy is not that. He's an entrepreneur who is also a fan of the Constitution. And if that's the case, that's welcome. Maybe he needs to be a Secretary of the Interior, Secretary of State. VP may or may not be his bag. But the issue is the other people that will be, and whether or not we are going to forget to cure bonitis because we are too busy being successful. Consider that code speak. Go back to that video if you're confused. What we need to worry about is things like what Bill Bailey shared. And what it was is a picture of Trump in what is obviously the freezing polar blizzard time that we're in right now here, because I live in Iowa. I've had to listen to locals talk. I've intended to listen to locals talk. I've talked a little bit to the locals. But mostly I've just kept my eyes open, look at bumper stickers, signs, or whatever. And here in the town that I live near and work in, I saw one sign with a thank you, Jack Smith sign. I don't know if it's still there or not. Vandalism is dumb. You prove people's point so they can have their dumb sign, right? But then somebody across the street from them has a dumb sign too, and it just says Nikki Haley. And I've seen a couple of them. There's one on the road on the way out to my house that's got a Nikki Haley sign. And as far as Republicans go, like, you'd have to be dumb. You would have to be an idiot to think, or just completely mind controlled, right? But Nikki Haley doesn't have these like dope AI propaganda pictures. She has these bullshit ads. And maybe those ads are AI. I don't know. Then again, there's also the ones that may be AI with I can't take it anymore, and the people sitting around drinking beers, and the people playing poker saying, oh, I can't bet on that. Koch brothers funded is basically what that is. And it's, oh, look, no, I looked up the ad and who the company is and who paid for it. So it is. And they're not going for a candidate. They're just going against a different candidate. So you got all these establishment neoconservative Republican honchos, oligarchs, or whatever, people that are affiliated with globalism and the Democrats' agenda and the progressive socialists trying to move to global communism, which the only thing that's going to result in is massive depopulation. And by the way, if you look at all the people that are pulling strings and the real big money billionaires and trillionaires, they're all into depopulation. Anyway, what was I talking about? Political propaganda. And the fact that AI deriving, AdSense logistics out of your content, mistake things like that for schizophrenia. So there were those idiot Koch brothers ads, and then there's these oversimple Nikki Haley, just China does bad thing. We must not allow them on other countries as well to do bad thing. And it's like the president doesn't have the power to do any of the things that she's talking about in those ads. Read your Constitution. That's Congress. Congress holds the purse strings. Who appoints the Secretary of State has some responsibility. Secretary of State is beholden to few or none. Those are Secretary of State concerns. Who the fuck is our Secretary? Was it Anthony Blinken? A. Blinken? A. Blinken. So Bill Belly posts this picture of Trump, and I think he's on a flag, like pushing the I don't know if it's an American flag or Trump flag or something. It's probably an American flag. And he's pushing through the cold, the whole line of people behind him, and that's us. Bitch, Trump did not trudge through no goddamn 15 below in the snow. I guarantee it. Des Moines has a pretty nice airport. Fly Trump 1 in or whatever, and Trump Force 1, dock it at the... He walked out underneath of an awning into a limo. I personally trudged through the minus 15 snow. You can see that video with the surf's up, but it's frozen that I just posted. It was minus 5 Fahrenheit before the wind chill that day at that time. Trump didn't do none of that shit. Vivek did some of that shit. He was out walking and getting in between vehicles at least, periodically on a bus. But I'll give him respect for that. Ron DeSantis and several Congress people who I previously thought were pretty solid, kind of based. Although most of the people in the Republican Party are like, look, if Trump's the nominee, we're going to support Trump. And if they do that, that's cool. But if they do that and he forgets to cure bonitis because he's too busy being successful, they need to keep him in check. So it could be that he intends to forget to cure bonitis and just be too successful for too long. In which case, all of his cabinet picks will be like before. If he actually wishes to put toward any positive direction for our country at this point, he needs some of these good people, but not all the people. Nikki Haley does not need to be in the cabinet. I don't think Ron DeSantis, I don't know, man. You know what? Maybe that's your Secretary of the Interior. But here's the thing. What he was doing for Florida the whole time, that people were cheering for all the ways he was helping Floridians, he was pulling federal government grants and such, things that were coming up and available under both Trump and Biden. And he was just wolfing all that shit into Florida. But I believe he was using it for Florida and not for himself. I question, I don't know what veracity there is that he was some kind of a cleanup man for the military, try and kind of keep things on the hush, or I don't know what cases he pursued or defended or whatever, because he was a JAG when he was in the military. So, you know, some of these guys have some of the credentials and a little bit of the pedigree, but I don't know that, 3% close is enough for people to be, in these positions. Now, Vivek, like I said, I think he needs to be somewhere up in there. He's a very smart guy. And if he seriously wants what's best for this country, then maybe he can kind of, take that little dangly carrot, push it that way or push it that way. Oh, it's the best. Me, the carrot. That's the best carrot. There's a lot of stuff, and people were doing it manually. They were actually painting these pictures, but even that is dangerous. You have everything from the absurd, 80s Rambo style, the presidents with machine guns and missiles and flamethrowers and, giant screaming eagle or whatever, horse, equine horseback, portraits, but it's totally like comic art covers. All the way to the God Emperor Trump meme. It actually is very dangerous. It is kind of idolatry. And I watched people get groupthunk sucked in with QAnon. A lot of people. And there are a lot of people still that just, they let go from the group, right? But they continued the group think. Only now it's kind of seeds planted, growing individually, a bunch of them becoming a forest or a field or something. Breadcrumbs turning into wheat trees. But I must tell you that I watched that happen because I believe it was 2008, leading up to, or no, it was the election, so it was 2012. And in fact, that was the year of the Smith modernization. There was an online, this is before Facebook was public. Facebook was just college alums only. And I don't know if this was going on there too. But definitely on individual, basically the truth movement exploded online. And soon the government moved in to control it. And they couldn't shut it down. They couldn't stop it entirely. But what they could do is begin controlling the narrative as well as controlling what people think of the folks who are looking for that truth. And again, this was all came into a real solid state of being for a lot of people, a worldview. And this thing in 2012, believe it or not, just remember all the things that people were saying early on about what was going on with Q and how they were proving it was real. There were a number of tweets made by the first president to have a Twitter ever that had some curious capitalizations. And these curious capitalizations, either you take those words and put them together and there's kind of a hint of a message. Sometimes it was good with grammar, sometimes it was not. And nowadays, full 2020, of course, and I'll tell you what happened to it so that you can understand what I'm talking about. Wheat trees. It's not nonsense. It's a pataphoric euphemism. It's beyond the pale into the absurd. These weird misspellings and other such, capitalizations and everything, led to a ciphering of hidden messages within Obama's tweets as president. That if you would reelect him in 2012, he would, in fact, arraign and indict and prosecute and send to Guantanamo Bay. They said this. Bush and Cheney, Wolfowitz, Rumsfeld, all of the architects of the Patriot Act in post 9/11 America. These people, in fact, put the laws in place that made it illegal to openly discuss the necessity to correct the government in a constitutional Second Amendment way. They made that illegal. That is why. It's not just a censorship thing, but literally they will come to your house if you talk about it. This was a law put into place by these people who either were in on 9/11 or totally let it happen, and then used it to justify 2 wars, which then Obama turned into a total of 7. He added 5 that we really didn't know too much about at the time. It wasn't until after he was gone, Trump got into office and was like, yo, why are we in these countries? Some of them we didn't know about until the people of the country were driven to overthrow their democratically elected ruler or dictator or whichever it was, toppling governments, places where now there's a slave trade. But anyways, I digress. The need to get rid of the swamp, to drain it, to eliminate that bureaucratic deep state, has got the media, who are controlled, paid for, bought, sold out. The government, much of which is the same, or at least corrupt, ethically or morally. They wanted to discourage people from seeing how bad it had been. The possibility that it could be struck down or gotten rid of must be controlled and dealt with. We can't make it stop. What we can do is make everyone who doesn't really think for themselves think that the people who do and are questioning this and saying, hey, now wait a minute, are crazy. Hence, my mental illness, which typically is given to result in faster thinking, higher IQ, a much more vivid imagination with which to get in depth in thought concepts, as well as, in my case individually, someone who is persistently tested off the charts in most of the cognitive abilities categories. Being labeled by the machine operated within, for example, the ads that are ever present because they're always paying attention to your stuff, trying to convince you that you might be schizophrenic, when in fact you already have been diagnosed with bipolar. And words like schizophrenic tend to be stop thought words. They're ones that if you call someone that, it's real hard to come back. Other people will stop listening once they hear someone being called that. Conspiracy theorist is another one. So the thing you really got to worry about is not that they're going to fake events to say, see, that happened. It's that people are being controlled by these. It's not that the AI is controlling anything. It's that people are trusting an artificial intelligence to procedurally generate the propaganda that they want to give to others, to make them think the way they want them to think. And of course, it has deleterious effects. So the propaganda that was used in 2012 was simply counterintelligence disinformation. What you would call a limited hangout, where there are people who are in on it and people who are not. And the people who are in on it guide the people who are not until everyone thinks the same. And then at that point, anybody who goes, hey, now, wait a minute, the others all just go, no, this is what we're looking at, regardless of whether that's what they should be looking at. Again, compare this to Q. And ultimately, the election happened and all of us got duped and we all voted because it was the most important election of our lifetime. And then those of us who were in it for the freedom, in it for the, burn this fucker down, or truth is what matters. Sometimes those, converge. And we said, hey, now, when's it start? And there was a waiting game, and it's coming any moment now. Keep reading the tweets. Funny thing is, there were people who got involved with this in 2012. It actually began in 2011. It ended in 2013. And people like David Wilcock, who was also into the Q thing, saying the same thing. There's going to be indictments. There's a shitload of sealed indictments. Look at this website. Look at how many, the number of indictments is just cranking up. And that's all the people that are going to Guantanamo, military tribunals. This was the thing that was going to happen to Bush and Cheney before it was going to happen to Bill Clinton and the Epstein buddies. Only it turns out that Epstein thing was actually real. So there is a problem there. Now, as an aside, when psychopaths lie, they tend to include a grain of truth. And Epstein was the grain of truth. And I'm not saying that the political corruption isn't real. The pay for play is definitely real. But they all do it. It's possible that Vivek has paid Trump to play in his arena. So the thing is, we're either going to get run back into the bullshit machine, or someone may get up in there and become a wrench, or the system will conveniently just not allow that person to ever be in a position to ever be a wrench. So the best way to control someone, for example, is to give them the illusion of power and influence. Makes me question a lot of things. So we asked, we pressed, we were told to wait, be patient. It's coming. It's just around the corner. Look at this stacking up of indictment numbers. Well, it turns out it's a website collecting the number of indictments, all of which are sealed until the trial begins, or until the judge arraigns. That is to say, that's what I would call the beginning of a trial. But basically, when someone is arraigned on charges, the indictments are, these are the charges. Okay, do you have evidence? That's a grand jury thing, right? This happens all across the country at the state as well as federal level. Possibly in the county, depending on the county. And at any time that investigation leads to a grand jury, is there enough here to make a case, do we think? Okay. To finish document the report of that, that's an indictment. But it's sealed after it's been written so that it's not publicly available, because that way someone can't Google if they're being investigated until such time as a warrant is served, the person is brought in, or it may just be process served. It may be a summons, and the warrant for arrest is only after they fail to appear. This is how it actually works, and it takes a long time. And while this is happening, the number of these sealed indictments per district is reported to a central record-keeping agency within the government, or that they all keep the record, is what I'm saying. It's more centralized now that it's digital. And at that time, they digitalized those records, and it became available. Because remember, the internet wasn't always here. And so, yeah, the number kept going up, but that was, I believe, just the number of indictments nationwide within federal districts. So it's a real thing, grain of truth, right? But what you're told it means is a lie. And then things went on. We started new wars. Things were not good. Nothing happened like it was supposed to be. Then they said, well, you're going to have to get mandatory health insurance. Go fuck yourself. You're going to pay extra taxes if you don't. At the time, of course, was pushed into the propagandization of progressivism, because I had seen these things be promised. Nothing ever happened. Come to the realization, maybe they didn't realize this would be a thing. Come to the realization that nothing's ever going to happen. The black pill. And they don't want that, because then you're not going to participate. Consent to the governed is necessary. One day, it all vanished. The forum threads, the websites, anything to do with the supposed thing that was happening that many of us had been trying to convince others was a thing. And in the process, probably just looking like lunatics. Vanished. Including usernames, people we thought were people. Real people that we were talking to, possibly friends with. Gone. Just vanished. Like a rapture. They're gone. And the few of us left holding the bag were like, wait, what? And then it just fell away because there was other propaganda and other things. And we who had been used did not remember. But then one day, as I was perusing what I thought was the community of truth, looking into the deeper bits of things, already well aware of, for example, Luke Rudowski of We Are Change, well aware of him far before anything else that he's currently known for. Among others, many of whom left the public sphere, some of whom said bye. They said goodbye and left. They were like, I'm done. I can't handle this. Have a good life. And those people, I believe, were organic. But then there were other people, of course, that would tend to vanish from time to time as movements changed. One day, perusing the truth community, completely disaffected from the liberal side of things, done with the Democrat Party, not wanting to be a Republican. A couple of people in the truth community, content creators, because now YouTube and Facebook were a thing, talking about a codenamed anonymous person or persons talking about something very similar to what I'd been into before. And I did not remember at that time yet that had happened. But as time had passed from the first time, my growth mentally got into a lot of logic, a lot of just, okay, why do I think a thought if it doesn't make sense? And as I progressed through the process of enlightenment, logic, etc., came to a point in my life where everything was different. The ambitions of being a musician were gone. Was living family life at the time in town. Had yet to be any kind of the local pariah that I am now. Was talking about these things, and it took me a while before I remembered, because when I did remember, it was because I was like, I feel like I've been trained for this, and I remembered back the forums that I visited, communicated with people on, that all these things had happened, and it all came flooding back, and I was like, this is a fucking psyop, and nobody would listen. And I tried to explain it, and the people I thought were cool that were my friends turned out to be part of the limited hangout, many of whom vanished. And especially since nobody's talking about Q anymore, it's gone. But these people that got into it, that didn't have the benefit that I had, still have little feelers out, antennae in the cosmos, looking for that thing they thought they were going to find. Maybe it's still there. There's always that hope. It's like the codependent victim of narcissistic abuse. Just, well, maybe they'll come back though. Maybe we can still. So my point is, the propaganda is very dangerous. And what's even more dangerous is the effectiveness with which these AIs are able to understand what a person is going for and render it the way they want. And then people share it out. And the problem is, 40 minutes almost into this, the problem is people are going around with a false worldview, and it is an hallucination of the way things are. And this includes periodic rosy colored lenses, thoughts, reminiscences, daydreams of things like the imagery provided in these AI generated propagandas, which are in many ways reminiscent of kind of the stuff that the Nazis put out, more so than the Soviets, although the Soviets had their own version. A lot of what they do with Trump is kind of like what they do with Putin, but not with the same angle. Putin was always, the strong man, and Trump's more they want everyone to think he's one of us, and it's like, I mean, technically he's a human, right? As long as he's a human, he's technically one of us. But I guess it comes down to an idea like the Megadeth song "Symphony of Destruction." You take a mortal man, you put him in control. So this was spurred by seeing the AI generated propaganda image. And also a live stream from Anomaly talking about what was apparently on a members only segment or something from the other night. Because I don't think it was on a show that I was watching, but I guess I didn't get through the whole thing. But Tim Pool flipping out, cussing. Luke was trying to make a valid point, and he was not being allowed to make it. And the valid point is that there's more than just the opinion on whether it should be mandated or not, a medical procedure, but the fact that it was rushed, the fact that it has caused an enormous amount of damage to people's lives, the fact that there are excess deaths to be accounted for that came from sources that are already known to be caused by the damage caused by that. Whether or not it's mandated doesn't actually matter. Rushed pharmaceutical, for which the companies that make them have been legally absolved by our government of responsibility, liability for the damage. And Tim got pissed and flipped out and accused Luke of being Trump deranged. And really what it came to was there just needs to be some acknowledgement from who is likely to be the Republican nominee and possibly even the next president of the fact that what happened that we're calling a pandemic and how it happened was a very terrible, terrible human rights abuse, and that without addressing it can freely be allowed to happen again and again and again. And if we don't want to get fleeced like that, something needs to be done. It must be acknowledged. Likewise, 2020 was some hog shit. Complete fuckery. As was January 6th. If the people that did that to us are not held accountable, it can and will freely happen again and again. Maybe if you bring it to Trump like that, he might listen. I don't know. Sorry for being rambly. I was secluded, sequestered. Four days of solitude. Trying not to shitpost on YouTube. I've been watching this stuff go down. Like I said, I've been here and there for a while now. Not just the last week or month or whatever. Heeding what people are saying. Listening, paying attention, taking it all in. And now that I'm at a point where something conclusive has happened here in Iowa, I can take a next mental step. And this is what it is. So, deepfakes are a thing, and it's an issue. But they're kind of easy to spot at this point. The things you got to worry about is the sentiment produced by the propaganda, which causes people to have this daydream idea. Like, is it me or is it the thought of me, right? Is it Trump or is it the thought of Trump? Well, the thought of Trump is turning into these propaganda images. So every time you think of Trump, like, for example, Tim Pool having his freak out, he's staring off into space while he's doing it. He's looking at his daydream picture of AI-generated propaganda Trump wearing an American flag beanie or something, right? That is how you know somebody's mind controlled. And I'm not saying he's MK Ultra plant or nothing like that. What I'm saying is that He is deep enough into the culture, and as he calls it, the culture war, but he's much like Bill Maher and all these other people that he criticizes, does not recognize his own biases and allows himself to be controlled emotionally by propaganda, whether he realizes it or not. And the thing is, I'm just saying, congrats if you're here 45 minutes into this video. High five to you. Anytime you confront someone who is brainwashed, mind controlled, and inform them of the fact that they are brainwashed and mind controlled, they will casually and more passively deny it. And when you bring proof and prove it to them, the likelihood is that they are going to have a complete deranged psychotic break. So if you saw what happened on Timcast last night or the night before, maybe it was last night and that's why they're on so late. I just need to go back and watch the last couple hours of it or something because I got off it eventually. This crazy shit happening is not enough to keep me watching the show the entire time. Most of the time I watch that show, I click off it after a while. I hear them get into the first few salient points, see what the mood's going to be for the evening. And if I decide I like it, I'll stick around as long as I can stand it. Otherwise, I'll go surfing for other random things because it's just the personalities or just having conversations. I'm not sure anything's being said sometimes. And what happened last night, or whenever it was, I think it was last night, was that Luke, who's a pretty fact-based guy, said, yeah, but this is still a thing we need. And he never even had a chance to get the idea out that this can, well, he kind of did, but this can and will happen again and again and again if something doesn't get done about it. It requires acknowledgement first and foremost, because the first step of moving forward is to admit that there is something that needs to be improved. Trump has to be able to admit that. Otherwise, he's going to self-defeat. Likewise, Tim was confronted there with this idea, and rather than even concede the possibility that it's at this point that I understand this because around election time in 2020 it was like this too, that Jimmy Dore said it's going to challenge your very ability to think. You get so wound into it that you're not actually thinking, you are virtually thinking. Virtual thought is a thing that is kind of an hallucinatory, superficial. Did I do it? Yep, I did it. No, you didn't check. You didn't check. That's not a check. And he's not checking his bias in this way. And so he's staring at this image of Trump trudging through the goddamn snow with a flag, wearing a beanie or whatever. One of us, one of us, one of us. While denying anything Luke has to say in the slightest. And a week or two ago, he was also complaining about the fact that Ron DeSantis' campaign staffers are like that with him. And other people have said the same about the way that they are online at the slightest criticism. They go nuts. Tim did that to Luke. That's interesting. It's not the deep fakes. It's the AI-generated propaganda, because a person with a good articulation of what they're going for and a sophisticated AI with the ability to fine-tune after the fact to make changes like they're able to do now, you can really polish that shit into something people don't think is shit. So I see what they're doing to the guy. It makes me think maybe that in alone it's, worth a shot. And then at the same time, though, I got to wonder about how much the system has put him in that position just to get everybody behind it. And it doesn't matter how many people actually vote, because what really matters is who counts the votes and who announces the results of that count. And again, that's something that previously we've known for election after election after election. And if you know me in person, like you've known me for years, and I'm not talking since my wife left me. I'm talking about since I got married, since before I got married. If you've known me, this is the thing I've talked about, is that the electoral process is extremely damaged. It's not fair. It's not clean. It's not transparent. And every single time there should be something done about it, and somebody says, yeah, I'll do something about it, and they get in and they fucking don't. And it happens over and over. And not only is it just the elections, it's also that shit with Epstein and whoever's replaced him, and the fact that they're compromising high-powered political individuals and others, powerful people in finance and science, etc. Somebody is compromising these people by having those people commit abuse against innocent victims. And nothing gets done about it. We never find out who the clients are, but that one lady says, see, we did something. The fuck out of here. Right? And the same thing with the pandemic and the vaccine and the damage and the excess deaths. And now they're talking about disease X. So we cannot be too busy being successful to forget to cure bonitis. Bonitis has like a million different causes in play right now that we can't treat the symptoms without dealing with the causes, the disease itself. So 51 minutes in, I think I'm done. I'm glad you're here if you're still here through this. If you are here at the end of this, leave a comment that says, hurry up and light that thing.